Yeah, someone with a sense of wonder, someone who wants to know what's going to happen next, someone who wants to have the opportunity to step out of her life or his life and into a book and be transplanted into an adventure that can only happen in the pages of a book. Because in the pages of a book, you not only see and hear what's going on, you smell, taste, and touch what's going on too, and you also internalize. You have this internal monologue going on in your mind as you're living through something. So someone who wants to inhabit the lives of characters who are wondrous and adventurous and exciting and can take us to places where we're probably not going to go when we walk out the front door. But when we open the cover of this book or turn the page of this story, we're going to get there. That's the reader I want. That's the reader I am. People like me.
Has been writing and sharing stories. And it's very interesting. I want to get into, from his website, which we have a link to in the show notes, there's a little story about how this author began, which I'm really curious about. We'll get into that. But Lawrence is here with us today on the show. And if you love thrillers, if you love stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, you found the right author. And I'm so glad to have Lawrence here. Lawrence, welcome to Living in the Next Chapter. Glad to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Now, we chatted before we hit record, and you've kind of told me a little bit, but tell our listeners, Lawrence, where you are in this great big world of ours.
Yes, where I am in Western Pennsylvania, which just a few miles from the airport, which makes me an easy commuting distance to New York and L.A., where the rents are considerably higher than they are here. Yeah. So in this age of Zooming and email and telephones in the pocket, I can do all of my business from here, or at least most of my business from here. And if I'm needed for a meeting, for a pitch session, for a conference, I can hop on a plane. I can be in New York in an hour. I can be in LA in 5 hours. And so it's a great place. My brother lives in LA, and so I have an apartment anytime I go out there. But he pays for his 2-bedroom apartment easily 6 times what I pay for my 7-room, full brick 3-story house. So it's a different world out there, but it's nice to have easy access to it. So I'm here. I'm looking out my window at beautiful woods, beautiful mountains, and this is where I do all of my writing.
Now, I'm again going off your website. We'll have a link in the show notes for everyone to go see what I'm seeing. But there's a story that I saw as well about you at a book signing. And that kind of being a spark, an impetus for you to be a writer. Can you tell us a little bit more about this story? Because I'm really curious about this.
Yeah, sure. I was thinking about being a writer. I was working as a musician at the time, and we were playing 5 nights a week. It was a really good gig, but I had an interest to be a writer because writers get to stay home whenever they want to. Musicians have to be out at night. My wife was working at the bank, and I was working at the pubs, and I would get in, we'd finish playing at 2, and then we'd go out for breakfast, and I'd roll in at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning. She gets up an hour later, goes to the bank, and never see her. And I was thinking that, there's got to be a way that an artist can work from home. So I'm walking out along the street. I was living in Pittsburgh at the time in a neighborhood called Squirrel Hill. And cultural area, very nice, and walked by a secondhand bookstore. And in the window, it said, tomorrow night, Joe Haldeman signing copies of his new book. And I knew Joe Haldeman. At least I knew the name. I'd been reading a lot of science fiction. And so I thought, this is great. I'm going to get there early. I'll get in line. I'll get to meet Joe Haldeman, and I'll be off to the races. And I got down there plenty early, and there was no one there. I said, well, this is great. I'm the first one. I went downstairs in the basement. There's Joe, and he's got a stack of books next to him. And I went down, and as it turned out, the event was not well publicized. And so I was just about the only one there. I was about the only one who showed up. And I've since learned that, great writers, small writers, any writers face this a lot. You do a signing, and very few people show up. But he was great. He was gracious, and he said, he asked me about my interest. I told him I was interested in learning about writing, and he said, well, if you want to be a writer, all you got to do is write. And at this time, the magazines, the science fiction magazines and the mystery magazines were really hungry for fiction. And he told me that. That's the exact word he used. He said, the magazines are hungry for fiction. Why don't you write something? Give it a try. I went home that night and I wrote a story. I sent it to Amazing Stories. And well, actually, I didn't. I sent it to another magazine, and then I sent it to another magazine, and then I sent it to another magazine, and then 11 months later, it sold to Amazing Stories. So Joe was partly right. All the magazines weren't hungry for my fiction, but Amazing Stories was. I sold them my next 4 stories, and then I moved up to Rod Serling's Twilight Zone magazine, which came out in the mid '80s, and I've been writing ever since. And I've never regretted it. I still play music. I'm sometimes still out till 2 a.m. I sometimes still get home when my wife is just getting up. But when I want to, and most of the times these days, that's what I want to do, I'm home writing. And it's a good life. And I would encourage anyone who's thinking about it, who's thinking that maybe, writing sounds like a good gig. I would say, you know what? It absolutely is. What are the downsides? There aren't any. This is a good life. Go for it.
So my audience is already anticipating this question, Lawrence, because I'm a musician as well. I've done my circuit of late nights and coming in the early dawn and having breakfast after the gig. So I can already see the eye rolls already from people listening to the show going, oh, here goes Dave. But I love music. Let's take a little side tangent for a second. What do you like to play? Tell me a little bit more about the music you've done in the past.
Sure. I got into it when I was in college, and it was a great time for a couple of guys with a couple of Martin guitars. We, my good friend, met him in college. I'm still friends with him, Christopher Lockery. We began playing together when I was a freshman, and we were able to get into the coffee house circuit, which was a thing back then. You could go from college to college to college, and you could make a great living playing music. And so, some kids go to school and they become athletes, and they go from college to college to college playing basketball. And we went around to the campuses playing music. And we did that throughout college, all through college. We continued to do that for a few years after we graduated. And then we went our separate ways. My brother is also a musician. I teamed up with him for a while, and then we went our separate ways, and that was when I started writing. But recently, and I say recently because it's within the last 15 years, Christopher Lockery and I got together again. We discovered that we remembered all the old songs. We were able to play them, and this time we recorded them. We put out a number of CDs. The music, the best of Lockery Connolly. His name is Christopher Lockery, and I'm Lawrence C. Connolly, so we put the names together, Lockery Connolly. The best of the Lockery Connolly band is available on Bandcamp. So you can find us there at Lockery, that's Laugrey, Connolly, band.bandcamp.com. And we've got our best stuff up there from our CDs. That's what I like to play. I didn't really answer the question. What kind of music is it?
Yeah.
It's folk rock with a Celtic flavor. But I also do electric, and I have a compilation CD of ambient tunes out there that was released in concert with my novel Veins. And Veins, which sounds like a very horrifying book, a very visceral book, is indeed, it is a horror book, but the title refers to veins of coal in the ground under western Pennsylvania. And it's a horror story about the spirits of the earth who live inside of those veins of coal decide that it's time to take back the earth. And so the music is based and inspired by that, and it's all instrumental electric music. Very proud of it. It's called Veins, the Soundtrack. And you can find that at my website. It's Lawrence C. Connolly. Let's see, how's that go? LawrenceCConnolly.com/music. That's where you'll find it.
Okay, now I'm going to have a lot to listen to on top of today's episode as well. I love this, Lawrence. What is the secret power and thing that ties music to authorship? What is it for you?
Yeah, I used to. I don't anymore. I got away from it, but I used to listen to music all the time when I wrote. And I would prefer electronica. I would prefer classical, anything that didn't have lyrics, because the lyrics are going to get in the way. So of what I'm thinking, of the words that I'm thinking. And so I used to listen to a lot of German techno, Tangerine Dream, and that really fueled. It was the rocket fuel for some of my early stuff. And eventually I just got away from it. And I don't know why. I keep thinking I should probably get back to it. But the other thing that I find is interesting about music, the intersection of music and the intersection of writing, and it's actually a difference that I enjoy, is that music, you create it in a blast, in a burst of energy, and you play it live. I do a lot of live performing, and it's 2-3 minute songs, boom, 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 right? And you know what I like about that? I like getting to the point where I know the song so well, I know the guitar part and the lyrics so well that I don't think about it when I'm playing.
Yeah.
I'm up there and I'm channeling the music. The music is all around me. I'm just there digging it with the audience. And it's hard to explain for people who aren't musicians. It's hard to, I guess maybe sports people, athletes can understand this too. You're in the game and it's just happening. And the game is happening around you. And I'm on the stage and the music is just happening around me. Now that can happen. That happens as soon as I get on stage. The lights go up, the sound comes on, we go into the first song, and I'm there. So for the duration, I'm channeling the music. Writing's a little bit different. I sit down and I really have to. It's almost like trying to get into a Zen state. Sit down, and I got to tell you, I often think or feel as if I'm standing on the edge of a precipice when I sit down to start to write, because I know that when I get into that zone, it's not going to be a series of 2-3 minute songs. It's going to be a long writing stint that could run 3 or 4 hours. And I'm going to lose that time in my life. I'm going to be kind of unplugged with my life. And I am going to be once I get into this book, once I get into this writing, I'm going to be zoned and oblivious to all that goes around me, on around me. And I sometimes think about, let's see if you or your listeners remember this movie, very obscure film called My Dinner with Andre. And it starred Wallace Shawn. And you probably know him from The Princess Bride. He's that little bald guy, little squirrely guy.
Inconceivable.
And so it stars him and this other guy. I'm going to forget his last name, but it's Andre. And they are talking about writing. They're talking about art. And I never forgot this. Andre quotes. Oh man, am I going to remember this? It's one of the great French filmmakers, and maybe it's Truffaut, but it's somebody like that. And he says, I could always live in my art, but not in my life. And so when I sit down to write, and I know that when I build up a good head of steam and I really get into the fiction, that I am going to tune out my life for about 3 or 4 hours. And if I'm writing a novel, that's going to be 2 or 3 hours a day for maybe 6 months. And I'm going to miss a lot, but I'm going to get a lot too. So it's a trade-off. I don't want to be that guy who lives only in his art, but not in his life. So I do try to make a balance. But the question was, how do I see music and in writing? How do they compare? How are they different? In music, it's a series of short bursts. I get applause. I take a breath. I do it again. In writing, I sit down. I build up a slow head of steam. I get there. I stay there in the zone for a couple of hours. I finish. No applause.
Right.
I decompress. I go downstairs and play with my kids. I do something meaningful.
And then the immediacy of the reaction of a live crowd for music. You get instant feedback, whether they're connecting with it musically. Some people might stand up and leave. You're like, well, that's interesting feedback. And other people are totally engaged, yelling, cheering, clapping. That's instant feedback on stage. And then for an author, a little delayed reaction as you work this through more of a solitary process, right? Comparison.
That's right.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? And I have to tell you that I love the applause. I love the instant gratification of music. But when I'm waiting for a book to come out, I get really antsy.
Yeah.
And I said that there's no downside of writing. It's not a downside. It's just, tension, excitement is good for you, right? And so, but I really get antsy when a book is coming out. And I know, and I have a book now that is coming out in October, and I'm already thinking, oh my gosh, I hope this gets well received. You put a lot into something. You then have this long lag period between the time it's finished and the time it comes out. And then it comes out. And then finally, if you're lucky, you get some applause. I'm waiting for that now.
There you go. On that edge of that precipice, when you're starting to write, as you sit down in that space to write your book and write that next chapter, living the next chapter, name of the show, as you begin to get in there in that space, what's the mixture of excitement and anticipation, I guess, and maybe a little bit of fear? Like where are you in that spot?
Yeah, it's all those things. It's there's doubt. Even though at this point I really think I know what I'm doing. I think I got a handle on this stuff. But there is still that element of doubt. There is that element of, can I pull this off? There is that moment, and writers need to keep this in mind, particularly young writers. When you sit down and you don't really know what you're going to do. You don't really know what the first word is. Hemingway said, write one true word and follow it with another. So I write that's a true word. What comes next? I don't know. I have no clue. And so sitting there staring at the blank screen, it can be intimidating, and it can feel as if you're not going to punch through. But if you stay there, if you think about the story you want to write and you try to picture the characters and where they are and what they're going through, just try to plug into that reality you've created in your mind, you will eventually achieve something that I like to think of as the hole in the page. The page will open up and it'll suck you in, and then you're off to the races. You're in the zone. It takes a while to get there. Don't be frustrated if it's taking a while to get there. Everybody goes through that phase, that transitional phase when writing. But when you get there, when the words start coming and it's kind of like playing a song and you're not really thinking about it, you're just doing it, it's just happening, that's a good place to be. So, yes, all of those emotions when I sit down, but the goal is to power through them and get to the place where I forget those emotions exist for me and they only exist for my characters.
This podcast is loosely based on a song that I love. Natasha Bedingfield, the song is Unwritten. And in the song, she says, today is where your book begins. But in the lyrics, she actually mentions like staring at that blank page before you, right? And it's kind of a nod to anybody creative and an author and kind of the process of writing. And it kind of, for me, every time I want to reset, I just go listen to that song and kind of ingest those lyrics. It helps me to kind of get back to the podcast and back to telling great stories.
Yeah, that's great. Art inspiring art. Artists have got to listen to music, and artists have got to read books. It feeds. We feed off of that. Absolutely. And something else I'd like young writers to keep in mind, and I like to remind them of it often, is that you can't always be sitting at the computer. Yeah. You want to write. And, of course, you are a writer. The moment you start writing, you're a writer. You don't need to publish. And so you're sitting at the computer and you're working a little bit, and then you've got to get up because somebody needs you or you have to do something. You have to cut the grass or sweep out the garage or feed the cat or something. Yeah. And young writers often think of that as procrastination, but it's not because a writer is writing all the time, 24/7. You're up from the computer, you're doing something else, you're still writing. And here's something to keep in mind, too. If you hit a place where the words just aren't working, you hit a point in the story where you don't know where it's going to go next, get up, go do something, sweep out the garage. I guarantee you, before you pick up that broom, you're going to start getting ideas. Yeah. And by the time you start working, you're going to be thinking of exactly what you need to do in a story. It's called something called the doorway effect. And this is a story that I've heard attributed. I heard it, I believe. Let me see if I get this right. From Michael, I'm going to get his name wrong, lead singer of REM, Michael Stipes.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was telling a story about how he and Bono were writing music, and Michael Stipes was stuck. He didn't know where a lyric was going to go. And Bono's advice was, get up, walk out of the room, come back, and you'll know what to do. And I've since heard this referred to as the doorway effect, that if you're stuck in your writing or your creativity, just get up, walk out the door. It's amazing how suddenly your mind opens up and the problem that you thought was insoluble when you were sitting in that chair becomes crystal clear. And people have probably noticed this in other ways too, and that is that sometimes you can be sitting at your desk and you think, oh, I better go unplug the toaster or something mundane like that, and you get up and you walk out the door and you forget, what did I come up for? What did I come out here for? What am I supposed to be doing? And then you turn and you go and you sit back down and you say, oh yeah, the toaster. That's it. So that's the doorway effect. And it's something that's annoying if you're trying to unplug the toaster, but it's something that's great and liberating if you're a writer. Just get up and do something else and the words will come.
Yeah.
You'll go running back to the keyboard in no time.
Okay, so for the readers now, Lawrence, you have a pretty rich library for us to fall in love with as a new reader coming to you. Is there kind of a common thread for you across your writings that you kind of go back to that kind of tie everything together, or everything kind of just stand on its own for a reader?
No, I think it's all sense of wonder. I think I'm motivated by sense of wonder.
Okay.
That's what I'm going for. I write a fair amount of science fiction. The new book I have coming out, Execute and Run from Sazek Science Fiction, is all about the sense of wonder. And the science fiction is, wow, I wonder if that could be possible. And then the flip side, you have horror, which I also write. And then in horror, it's, boy, I hope that's not possible, But it's all about wondering about stuff. And I'm just always wondering about stuff. So, and then also in the music, too, I think that I like a song that has some sense of anticipation. What's going to happen next? And if I'm writing instrumental music, I do like to have it build in such a way that something a reader or the listener will wonder, okay, this is an interesting theme. Where's it going? And then I like to take the reader there in a way that is at once unexpected and inevitable. So I get there and it's fun. It's interesting. It's totally interesting. The reader wasn't expecting it, but when the reader hears it, yeah, that's the only place the song could have gone. So I think I think wonder, apprehension, anticipation, those are the things that kind of tie everything together. I know that those are very vague and nebulous, but that's where I see the link. And people sometimes say, you write horror and you write science fiction. What do those have in common? And I think it is that sense of wonder, and it's very closely related sense of dread.
What's your working relationship with your brother? You mentioned musically, but as far as your writing and what he does, can you talk a little bit about this relationship?
Sure. Hey, this is fun because I come from an Irish family, so I have 5 siblings, and
Okay.
and 2 of my brothers are accomplished musicians, and I have played and toured with them. And then I have another brother who is the one living in L.A.
Yeah.
And he is more of an entrepreneur and an artist. He's a graphic artist, but he is, let's say, a fashion designer. That would probably be more accurate. The guy's amazing. His name's Christopher Connolly. And when he was in his early 20s, he just packed up and he moved to New York, didn't have anything. He didn't have any money, just ended up living in a loft there and decided to go into business as a fashion designer. And this was a great time to be a young fashion designer, a young hip fashion designer, because he would just jot these things down on the paper and he would go to meetings and he would pitch stuff, and some of the biggest companies in the business would buy from him, and he was extremely successful. He's in LA now, and he occasionally, he's not a writer. Well, he does write, but he's not a writer to the degree that I am. He's much more gregarious. He's much more out there than I am. And so he does come up with ideas. And most of the ideas that we come up with, that anybody comes up with, are just going to be throwaway ideas. They've probably been done before. They're probably not very interesting. But he was always good about just saying, hey, I got this idea. I got this idea. And then one day he had this idea for a book called, or actually a film. He wanted it to be a movie. called The Minutemen. And this was about a group of wounded warriors, veterans, and people from some of the most dangerous places on Earth that have tried to make a difference, have tried to help people, but have ended up becoming maimed and disabled and sent home and forgotten. And so in this story, these wounded warriors get a second lease on life, and they get treated with something that gives them some unexpected abilities and some very incredible abilities. But the problem is those abilities don't last long because the human body just can't be supercharged for very long. We wear out, we tire out.
Yeah.
So these characters are able to do really incredible things, but they can only do them for about a minute, and then they poop out. They're done. They're depleted. Actually, they're worse than they were when they started. They are completely invalid. And what that means is that this team of commandos that call themselves the Minutemen, just like the Minutemen during the Revolutionary War, this team of commandos needs to work together. They're from different parts of the world. They're from different walks of life. They have different ideas and different prejudices and different beliefs, but they have to work together because going it alone is their kryptonite. Teamwork is the only option. When they get in somewhere, kind of like a Mission Impossible story, right?
Yeah.
If they get in somewhere, they infiltrate some fortress, they get in there, they need to rescue somebody. They are all together, but one by one, they are going to drop, and they are going to need to be protected by the others, and they have a commitment to each other, everyone out alive. How they're going to make that work requires great planning. And the fun thing about this book is, and this is Minutemen Execute and Run that comes out in October. Mm-hmm. The fun thing about this book is the way the Minutemen have to plan strategically what they're going to do, where they're going to go, how they're going to care for one another when they become incapacitated, and who's going to do what when. Well, this is basically my brother's idea, was to have these characters with these short-lived abilities. And when he told me about that, I said, I want in. I want to be involved in this. So I wrote the screenplay. We brainstormed a bit together, and then I wrote the screenplay. I finished it in time for the film Nightmare Cinema to premiere in L.A. This is the film that I worked on with Mick Garris, the producer of Masters of Horror on Showtime. And so Chris and I, he was not living in L.A. at the time, we went out to L.A., and in between screenings of the movie, we pitched to various producers. And we met with great enthusiasm. People really dug the idea. And then there was one last meeting. But I had to come home. I had other things I needed to do. And I said, why don't you take the last pitch session? He said, sure, okay. So the last pitch session was with a guy named Jonathan Sanger. He's an Academy Award winner. He produced Elephant Man, and he produced Vanilla Sky. Wow. Great films. Yeah. And so I take off, and I figure this is a long shot, you know. So I have a stopover in Salt Lake City. I get off the plane. I've got all these messages from my brother. I call him back. He says, I met with Jonathan Sanger and his producing partner, M. Jones. They're interested, and they want to work with us. So that was we were off to the races at that point, and it looked like looked like things were certain. But I know from talking with other screenwriters and other playwrights and novelists that sometimes things get delayed. Well, shortly after we made this arrangement, COVID hits, everything shuts down. Sometime after that, things just get up and running again. We think we're getting a little bit of momentum. The writers strike, the actors strike. Okay, that gets cured. We're getting a little bit more momentum. Fires. I have a photograph taken from my brother's balcony in West Hollywood, and the fires came within blocks of that apartment. And so it just seems as if we were getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And at one point, I figured, well, what the heck? Let's write a novel. Let's make this a novel. So I wrote the novel. And since we had the screenplay and we'd done a lot of brainstorming, it was a delight to write. It was really exciting. It took about 6 months and sent it off to my agent. My agent sent it off to the good people at Arc Manor Publishing. And Arc Manor has a science fiction line called Sasic Science Fiction. And they're the people who are bringing it out. So, the film hasn't been made yet. but we got a novel.
Generally, it seems like novels turn into movies, not movies turning into novels. So I like the reverse engineering of this.
Yeah, it is. I didn't think that I would be writing a novel until after the movie came out, but it worked out this way, and I'm glad because I really liked this book. I cannot wait till it comes out. And if your listeners are curious, if they'd like to learn a little bit more about the book, we have a newsletter on Substack, and they can find it. It's called ConCom, C-O-N, as in Connolly, Connolly brothers, right? ConCom, as in communication, entertainment. One word, concomentertainment.substack.net. No, excuse me, .com. concomentertainment.substack.com. And if they go there, they will find a newsletter that talks about the book, Execute and Run. And there are trailers there, there are videos there, all kinds of cool concept art that my brother Chris created. It's terrific stuff. I think they'll get a big kick out of it.
Are you an avid Substack user and participant yourself?
No, I had to learn how to use it to do this. I told my brother, I said, we got to do a newsletter. I've had a website for years, and I have a blog that I've had for years. But I was hearing that the way to go is to have a newsletter. So we do have this newsletter. It's a very ambitious newsletter, and people who subscribe to it get all kind of stuff. They get, as I say, they get videos, they get behind-the-scene photos, they get artwork that Chris has created, and we have a number of surprises coming in the next couple of issues. But it's a bi-weekly newsletter, and it's a lot of fun to put out. But the learning curve was very steep. I don't know if anybody has tried Substack that's listening, but I tried it, and it took me quite a while. It's not that it's a hard system to learn. It's just a new system, right? So I had to learn it, but I got it now. I'm set. I'm off and running. Every other Tuesday, we come out.
Excellent. And it's great for authors. It's great for building community around what you do, connecting with people, having interaction. I think it's a great site people should look into as an author, as a creative. Again, even while you're starting as a new author, start building community around what you're doing and write in public and get feedback and get ideas. I like that. It's a great idea.
Right. It is. I've run into a lot of people on Substack, too, a lot of exciting writers. It's a good platform.
Now, one thing I see when I scroll through your books on your website, Lawrence, is there seems to be a passion for the letter V starting book titles. Is there I'm looking at Veins, Vipers, Vortex, and Visions, I see, and Voices. I see all these V's. Do you have a passion and a love for the letter V? Like, I feel like this is really important to you for some reason.
I like the way it looks.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Here's the story behind that. Yeah, there are 5 books that all begin with the letter V. And, of course, the outliers are This Way to Egress and Minutemen, Execute and Run. Those are the 2 that don't begin with V's. But the story of the V is that a new publisher called Fantasist Enterprises, and they were a startup back in the early 2000s. And they came on, like gangbusters. They were doing a lot of great books. And the guy in charge of it is a fellow that I've come to know and become very good friends with, William H. Horner. And they looked like the place to bring out my books. And we made a 5-book deal with them. And so this was the plan, that there would be a series of 5 books, Veins, Vipers, and Vortex, those are the novels, and Visions and Voices, those are the story compilations. The one would come out every year, and then at the end of the year, there would be a box set of 5 books, and on the outside of the box would be the letter V, or the Roman numeral 5 for 5 books.
Okay, I get it.
And that was going to be it. And so it was not only that it just looks good on a cover. Amazing Stories, the magazine, the science fiction magazine, was well known for having the letter A really big and then the word amazing sweeping away from it like a comet tail. And so here we have the letter V, kind of an inverted A, on the cover. Great big V, and then the words that finish the title coming after it. So there's not really any symbolism there other than it being the Roman numeral for 5. but it looked cool. It was a kind of it was an attempt at branding, and so yeah, those books are still available. I'm talking to fantasists now. They have gone through a transition, as many small presses have. And actually, my book Vortex was the last book that they brought out. And since then, they've been concentrating on other areas. And Will Horner is a terrific graphic designer and web designer. And he designed my website when he was bringing out these 5 books. So I got a great deal. I mean, I got paid for the books, plus I got a great website designed by Will Horner. So it's great. I cannot complain.
There you go.
But
and on the novels, I see that there's a sign of things to come on each cover. Actually, a road sign for each of the ones, and that's interesting too. Right. I love how you tie them all together. It's very smart.
Yeah, that was Will's idea. Yeah. He's quite an artist.
Excellent. So for a writer who thinks, wow, the idea of my book, my writings ending up on film, and potentially that being a path for me as a writer. Anything? Do you have to write differently when you say go from a novel to the movie? I know you went the other way, but is there a different mentality or different approach that you need to have when you write for the screen eventually?
Yeah, I think the key is to start out writing visually. Write for the senses, certainly. And sight and sound are going to be the dominant senses that you write. Now, of course, in stories and in novels, we get the opportunity to engage all the senses. That's exciting. That's what's great about literature. Yeah. But as far as writing something that is going to be picked up by the movies, I would really encourage young writers to write as visually and as acoustically, auditorially, as sensorily as possible. Because I discovered early on, I didn't really try to get into films, but I was just a couple of years in as a writer when I came home one day and my wife says, "You got a call from Hollywood." And I'm thinking, yeah, right, what's the punchline? And she said, "No, this guy called. He wants you to call him." It turned out it was a young man named Steve Muscarelli. He went on to work on television shows like Rescue 911, and he wanted to option my story Echoes, and he wanted to shoot a film based on it. He wanted it to be a festival film, so this would be a short film that would be shown at festivals that could be a showcase for his talent. And surprisingly, within a week or two after that, I hear from the former editor of Amazing Stories who worked with me, who said that she was working with a film producer who wanted to option another one of my stories. And so here, within the course of a couple of weeks, I've got 2 film options. And this continued. And I started getting a lot of inquiries about my stories, people wanting to option my stories. Now, I'll tell your new writers out there that a film option isn't a contract to make the movie. It is simply an agreement whereby the producer pays the writer some money so that the producer can say, "I have the right to produce this film if I can find the actors, if I can find the director, so on." But you're not making the film. So the writer gets paid up front for business conversations to begin about the work. And then, if you're fortunate enough, the film actually gets made, and there are a variety of paydays that happen after that. Right. But it doesn't happen instantly. It took quite a while for these movies based on Echoes to be made, and listeners can find one of those films on YouTube. It's called Echoes. It's directed by this one is directed by a director named Rodney Altman. Okay. Terrifically talented director. And it's on YouTube, so Google Altman, Echoes, Connolly, and you'll get it. And then the story that became the segment of Nightmare Cinema, which is an anthology film, much like Tales of the Crypt, with Mickey Rourke, actor Mickey Rourke playing the Crypt Keeper.
Nice.
That took from 1993, when I wrote the story, to 2000, when I first optioned it, to 2019, when the film came out. Can you believe that? That long. And And yet, what else are you going to do? So I did a lot of writing in the meantime. But if you do enough of these, and so I guess the question is, how do you write for the screen? You write for the senses. You try to write something that when people read it, they can see it and they can hear it. And of course, with the other senses engaged, they can feel it as well. And you hope that somewhere somebody is going to read it and say, I think this would make a great movie. They reach out to you, and this is also why you have to have some kind of presence on social media or a website. You have to be easy to find,
Right.
And then when people go looking for you, they find you, and then you take it from there. So, write for the senses.
Okay.
Is what I was.
For the readers, Lawrence, that are listening, they're here to fall in love with their new favorite author, to go deeper with these authors. And like, you have so many things to offer, which is great. Can you describe to me who you would anticipate would be a reader that would enjoy what you do, enjoy your stories? Can we kind of unpack who that person is in your mind as you kind of produce all this? Because I want that person to self-identify and go, oh, he's talking about me. This sounds like a book that I would love, and a series of books that I would love to fall in love with. Who is your ideal reader? Who do you have in mind?
Yeah, I someone with a sense of wonder.
Yeah.
Someone who wants to know what's going to happen next.
Okay.
Someone who wants to have the opportunity to step out of her life or his life and into a book and be transplanted into an adventure that can only happen in the pages of a book. Because in the pages of a book, you not only see and hear what's going on, you smell, taste, and touch what's going on too, and you also internalize. You have this internal monologue going on in your mind as you're living through something. So someone who wants to inhabit the lives of characters who are wondrous and adventurous and exciting and can take us to places where we're probably not going to go when we walk out the front door. But when we open the cover of this book or turn a page of this story, we're going to get there. That's the reader I want. That's the reader I am. People like me.
Now that's helpful. That's really good. Lawrence, you've mentioned your website many times. We'll have the link in the show notes for everyone to follow up, and your link to Substack as well. But for a new person coming to your website, I see many things available here for them. Is there something beyond the music tab that you mentioned that should be a point of reference they should check out on the website for sure as a first-time visitor?
Yeah, I would encourage them, particularly the new writers, I would encourage them to check out the video tab. So that's lawrenceconnolly.com/video. And the top video there is a TEDx talk that I gave a few months ago. And it is about resilience in writing. And in it, I use reference the life of Mary Shelley as an example of writer resilience. And so I would encourage anyone who's interested in writing and wants to know that the struggles that they're going through are not struggles that are unique to them, are not not frustrations that only they have felt, that they check out that video and listen to that story of Mary Shelley and how the deck really seemed to be stacked against her and how she nevertheless created something that became an icon. She's perhaps one of the best-known writers of all time, and her creation is one of the best-known fictional characters of all time. And yet she began at age 18 with a great deal of doubt, not sure that she could pull it off. Boy, she did.
Lawrence, the podcast again, Living the Next Chapter. It's kind of in the name. As you celebrate the launch of your most recent project, I like to ask my guest, because my audience wants to know as well, how are you, Lawrence, living your next chapter? Can you give us some vision to where you're going down the road from now?
Yeah, well, right now I have the great pleasure of doing the final pass on my manuscript for Execute and Run, and so I'm reading it and changing a word here and a word there. I need to have it done in a couple of days. After I wrap this up, I hope to get back into the studio with my longtime bandmate, Dwayne Davis. I haven't mentioned him before, but he's a terrific bass player and percussionist. Nice. And we're going to record a song for Execute and Run. We're going to record a Minuteman song. So, and there'll be more about this on Substack. Beyond that, I have a play opening in November, and it's based on the stories of Edgar Allan Poe. It's called Mr. Poe Presents Mr. Poe Presents Tales of Horror, Mystery, and Imagination. And it is a play in which Edgar Allan Poe walks out on stage, stands at the podium, and introduces, let us say, reimaginations of 4 of his best-known stories. And so people who attend this will be able to see reimaginings of Murders in the Rue Morgue, Fall of the House of Usher, The Telltale Heart, and The Raven. And very excited about this. Other things that I have going on, I did have a podcast that Prime Stage Theater produced called Prime Stage Mystery Theater. You can find that at my website. And, where else am I going? After all of this, I'm probably going to be looking at the next installment of the Minutemen franchise, hoping that we get another book deal out of this one, and hoping that the screenplay gets before the cameras. We'll find out. If it happens, you'll hear about it on Substack.
Will that track for Minutemen be a 60-second track to be true to Minutemen?
Isn't that great? Yes. It's probably going to clock out at 3.5 minutes.
Okay,
but I have done some. I do have a 60-second track that people can hear when they play the book trailer. I guess the easiest way to find the book trailer is either on Substack or go to minutemennovel.com, and the trailer is there. And so there's a 60-minute piece of music that Dwayne Davis and I play. It's a really rocking theme. I think people will get a kick out of it.
Excellent. Lawrence, you're a very creative gentleman. There's so much going on here. My mind is spinning, but how you keep all this going and all afloat at the same time, it's just a testament to you as a creative person. And I think people, once they come to you and find you for the first time, you're pretty sticky. People are going to cling to you because there's so much that you put out in the world. I think it's amazing.
Good. Well, thank you very much for that. I hope to meet some of these readers. And of course, we do meet, even though I've written the words and I've sent them out there, and they are going to read the words. We are not going to meet physically, but we will meet on that page, and looking forward to having them discover those works.
And as a listener to the show, next time you walk by a bookstore or an event space and you see a posting for an author signing, follow Lawrence's advice and follow his path that he's chosen and happened for him. Go talk to that author. Go spend some time with them. You never know what it's going to lead to. Look what happened for Lawrence from one interaction. So it's a great story, Lawrence.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Everyone, all the information for Lawrence in the show notes as always. Please, when you buy, not if, but when you buy Lawrence's books, please leave a detailed review. Let people know why you've fallen in love with these works so that more people will be attracted and come and also support Lawrence as a reader. That's one thing we can do as readers. We can support our authors by giving them our words back. It's our return gift to amazing creative people like Lawrence. Lawrence, again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been great being here, and I will keep following your podcast because I really enjoyed this and I really enjoy your podcast. Excellent. So do take care.
Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.